All right, welcome Matt Hebert to Artist Spotlight 2020 from Millstream Arts Festival and the downtown St. Cloud Art Crawl. This has been such a pleasure for me getting to know artists that I hadn't ever connected with this downtown St. Cloud Art Crawl. This collaboration has really been quite a pleasure for me to get to know more artists in our community and learning about them. And I'm really excited to share it with the rest of our community also through this artist spotlight. So let's start out by having you share who you are and what do you do, Matt?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. It means a lot. I've come to get kind of comfortable in the studio space over the last month, so it's fun to bring people in here virtually, and I probably never would have expected to have a studio connected to the place that I work. So what I do is I try to connect stories among lots of different people from lots of different communities. That's really the heart and soul of what I do. I do that as an artist. And I do that also as the ministry director for Central Minnesota Youth for Christ. So I serve in that capacity, but those worlds overlap a whole bunch, such that when I took the job in 2002, I said to my executive director during our interview together, I'm like, no, really, I'm an artist and I need studio space. And I care about connecting big stories across denominational lines. And I really value the next generation. And I kept waiting for him to say, thanks very much. We don't have a job for you. But he just stayed interested. He's a guy who appreciates the connection between stories as well. So I get to do that as a ministry director. So I work with lots of staff for programming for teenagers. And I do that here in the studio. I was an art major in college and married an art major. So we were in it for the big bucks, obviously. You know, we've got three kids,
Yes.
Two of whom are visual artists, and they love the outdoors and adventure. And we just can't think of a better way to do life. So I'm sharing this with you from this studio space that I get to work in with teenagers and continue to make my own work and team with my staff to swap stories of people. So there's a lot
Nice.
there, but
There
that's a good
is.
place to start.
That's wonderful. So what medium do you work in? What's your primary medium you work in?
Yeah. I grew up just making images like a lot of artists. I grew up drawing and working with anything that could produce some color and make some marks. And I was really a drawer growing up, more than anything, and valued that technique and just knew that time evaporated when I was making art, like so many
Mm.
artists. So you sort of get in the zone, and all of a sudden the clock doesn't mean anything, and only the finished product and process are where you live. So when I stumbled into oil paint as a 19-year-old, um, these worlds of color and texture and drawing converged, and then the stuff didn't dry. So for a guy who loves to make edits and amendments
Mm.
and change things, I I thought, I might never eat or sleep again. I'll just be in the studio. So once I started to oil paint at age 19, I haven't found a way to not fit that into my life. So I do some other things here and there, some mixed media. I do some acrylic once in a while when I when I'm pushing a deadline or something.
Sure.
But I, you know, I will be making oil paintings until I can't make oil paintings.
Wow. And at 19 to find that, you really need a space to be able to work with oil paint. I don't know if 19 I could have figured that out. So that's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah. I don't know what happened. I was an art major at a really expensive school, and I figured let's spend a whole bunch of time making art that maybe won't sell. I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but
Been there. Been there.
but it's
Totally
awesome.
get it.
I
Yes.
wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, yeah, it
I love
stumbled
it.
me into all kinds of great overlap with people.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so, in speaking of people, in a world full of people trying to stand out, trying to make their mark in the world, what is the one thing you would like people to know about your work that they leave with? The one thing they kind of leave with?
Yeah. Um, y- you know, Good friends who are familiar with my work, and for that matter, folks who've just sort of bumped into it, have talked to me about a little a sense of longing when they look at these pieces. Um, I think that's certainly my experience in the studio is that I'm reaching for some things that I just haven't gotten to see yet. A lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people do, but I think those who illustrate have to do the hard work of understanding their outcomes perhaps before they achieve them. As an artist, especially as an oil painter, I go into the studio in order to see something, not because I see something. It's because I've got a hint about something, and I go into the studio to pursue that, and it's on the other side of that that the satisfaction comes when I discover something I otherwise might not have. So this idea of longing seems to find its way into my work, and then probably the other really important concept that I carry with me as an artist, I'd love others to carry with them as they experience the work, is this idea of integration.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is when the physical and the spiritual and the social and the literal converge in the same space, like they do at the breakfast table, we have to make sense of that. And I love it when everyday objects get reorganized, reconsidered in light of maybe a fresh concept or a metaphor. I don't like to take my work way out into the deep end of the pool. I always love to have it, sort of rooted in something, maybe something objective. I do abstract work, but there's always a sense of objectivity to it. So I just love integration where big ideas have to play in the space of real time and real space and color and the limits of a canvas and objects that you can recognize, but take you to spaces that you have to reckon with that are maybe deeper. So
Ah,
integration and exploration and longing are yeah, the space I live in as an artist, and what I hope others experience when they see the work.
wonderful. Well, let's see some pieces. Let's see some
Yeah,
pieces, and let's explore that integration with your work here. So it's always great to start with a self-portrait. I think that was an
yeah,
excellent choice.
yeah. Get to know you piece, and I'll tell you the work of making a self portrait is a get to know you experience.
Hmm.
Um, I'm thinking about just some of the raw process of doing a self portrait, standing in front of a mirror, uh, getting comfortable with your facial expression as you're trying to make marks on a canvas. So this is sort of that 3 foot glare that you get when you're staring at a canvas. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
These things become more valuable with time. I've got a self portrait up here that I did in 1995. I don't know how to make the camera. There we go. It's up above me here. There it is. My back
Okay.
is to the
Oh,
my back
sure.
is to the viewer, and
Hmm.
yeah, like I'm 20 years old and thinking about things. So I expect that this piece that you're viewing now is one that's going to be probably more valuable to me in 20 years.
Hmm.
But I like to sort of make mile markers, and this feels like one of them.
Nice. I like the color use too. That's exciting.
Yeah, that was
All right,
fun.
this next one here,
Um,
blind spot, I think.
yeah, it's called Blind Spot. I am a person of faith. I try not to be preachy with my art. I try not to be heavy-handed, but I see my work more as an invitation, exploration, opportunity for conversation. This piece was inspired, and a lot of my work finds some of its roots in the mysteries of the biblical text. And this particular piece is inspired by a passage in the Old Testament, Isaiah 58. It's a chapter about the kind of fasting that matters apparently to this God who cares about social justice. Um, and we have some figures here who have put that sort of central figure, that young character in the middle. Each of these characters on the perimeter have put this person in their respective blind spot, and
Mm.
the kind of result is a fasting that is not pleasing to this God of justice. You can spend your money on charity. You can fast and obey certain criteria, but if you neglect the weightier matters like caring for workers and loving the outcast and the foreigner among you, then that's just really not the fast that the God of the Old Testament is interested in. So
Mm.
again, not to get preachy, I
No,
think there's a lot of
no.
access points for people here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I knew there was a lot behind this one. I knew that when
Yeah.
I saw it. I said, there's more going on here. So thank you for sharing the story with us,
Yeah,
please.
and I think I'll add one more thing to that. I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody can see my mouse, but the character with their back facing us is actually a self-portrait of me. The person in front here with the blue sweater is my wife, and
Mhm.
um, and my wife actually took the photograph of this young boy in Mississippi some years ago. So anyway,
Okay.
it's just fun to put yourself in that conversation as well and have to rethink your own posture.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next piece has a special place for me because I have a Grandma Alice. And I think I have
Yay!
a portrait of my Grandma Alice that I made too.
I think everybody needs a Grandma Alice, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. Oh,
Yeah.
good heavens! This painting is 4 feet tall, and my
Oh,
grandma,
wow.
I think, was all of 4'11" when she stood upright. So I mean, her to now have her head almost as large as her entire being is just so perfect. She was a chicken farmer, and she didn't have time for all these sort of kind of deep reflections. She had work to do. She had prayers to pray. She had life to sort out in northern Minnesota. So she would always
Mm.
write me letters in college and sign them "Love and Prayers, Grandma Alice." And yeah,
Mhm.
so this painting actually hangs in my office downstairs from this studio, and she's hovering right there behind me as I'm fiddling away at my desk. I love it.
Love it. Love it. The next one's
Yeah,
Dream Catcher.
yeah, um, yeah. So as I said, a lot of my work has to do with integration, the idea of stories converging. So this is an aerial view. I use a lot of mapping in my paintings, but this is an aerial view of what is Lower Red Lake in northern Minnesota, and most of that is surrounded by Native American reservation, the Red Lake Reservation up there. I own property just on the southeast corner of that huge lake, and spend time fishing on that otherwise unknown river called the Black Duck River, and have had some sacred space there with my dad. And it's some of the space where my dad and I can kind of sort it out together, kind of understand each other uh, when that might otherwise be a little bit difficult. And so sacred for me. Um, this eagle is carrying what is a 3-story building on its back, and that is representative of some dreams that my wife and I have about shared living space, shared workspace, multi-purpose space that we might design and/or build. But really, it's about and the reason we'd want to build something like that is because we want the stories to connect. We think that there's something rich there. So we've got um, and some of this eagle has some Native American kind of gesturing to its form. It's a little bit symbolic. It gets a little abstract and simple with blocky shapes. And the reservation there has been somewhat of a mystery to me. It's a difficult place to grow up. I know I didn't grow up there, but I know the stories of some of the white Minnesotans who've grown up there, and there's just deep animosity in that part of the world. And uh, yeah, I grieve for that space, and yet it's some of the most important space that I visit in my life. So there it is, a
Mm.
lot of things being held together in one piece. Dream catcher.
Wow, that is a lot in one piece. Wonderful. Thank you. And the next one here is Probably one of my favorites. This I've seen this around town, and I was drawn to it right away. The
Yeah.
different places it's been exhibited.
Yeah. Yeah. This is yep, this is one of my favorites. Above the grid. I was interested in, so this is about, I think it's about 3 feet by 3 feet. It might be a little bit bigger. So it's got some size to it. It is a map of St. Cloud, but it pushes the abstract very quickly. Although the two scale outline here of the Mississippi in relation to some of the roads is accurate to scale. Um, but I was interested in the lines that we make. You know, when you look at maps or aerial views of the planet, we just can't get away from the crosshatch, from the grid work. You know, if you think about what you're looking at right now is a bunch of ones and zeros, sort of this grid of light and mathematics, really, in a digital world. It seems that what we put our hands to, we end up creating grids, and that was, in a sense, problematic for me. But I got to thinking more about that over time, and if you consider geometry, for instance, how beautiful, if you start to actually define terms in geometry, it's an entire faith proposition. Everything we do in geometry is built on the definition of a point and a plane, and those things are not definable. And yet, from that we get architecture. From that we get beautiful networks that coordinate, of roads and neighborhoods that actually coordinate with organic lines. So uh, above the grid is about seeing those things. The eagles, so you see the eagles there.
Hmm.
Those have come to represent for me a sense of presence, transcendent presence, bigger and beyond us, spiritual presence there, if you will, the presence of God. So I like the interplay between the feathers, and the grid work ends up being in the eagle because you know, if, as a student of the scripture, we reflect the image of God. We're not this completely other thing. We if we do things, the work of our hands, the beauty, the things we construct, they can reflect a, a bigger beauty, a larger beauty. So
Hmm. So
above the grid.
I want to go back to here how people can purchase your work. I want to talk
Hmm.
about that for a moment. So I do have your website up here.
Yeah.
Um, Matt Hebert at art.com. So
Yep.
people can go there and
Yeah.
what can they purchase there? What can I the prints or what can
Yep. They that website will, for each piece, give you a button that says inquire to purchase, which will essentially be an email directly to me.
okay.
I'm usually quick to respond to those things. So you'll notice that, you know, the originals are probably 3 to 4 times more expensive than the giclée prints on canvas. But I'll tell you what, those giclée prints on canvas, some of them, I can barely tell the difference between the
Hmm.
original. My printer in Minneapolis is just excellent, and I frame them for pretty cheap as well. So
Well,
inquire to purchase. I'd
yep,
love
check.
to help you get one.
Absolutely. So these pieces here and other pieces that people can check out there and
Yeah,
see work and purchase your work at matthebertart.com. So I hope
yeah,
people out there go visit and purchase your work, especially now I'm looking at the time here. I want to do a couple more pieces and then I just want to talk about how this time has changed your work a little bit after that. So this one's called Inside Outside.
yeah, yeah. This one was fun to make. It's 3 feet tall. I think it's actually an acrylic piece. This is again a top view of something. It's of cups filled with wine. Uh, and I got to, before I actually touched the canvas with a brush, I dumped a bunch of paint all over it, a la Jackson Pollock style, which was a
Hmm.
total hoot. And then I tried to make something of it. Um, so the idea here is that what's inside the cup ought to be consistent with what's outside the cup, and that comes from a teaching metaphor that Jesus used. That is, you clean the outside of the cup and make it look good. He says to the hyper religious professionals, but on the inside of the cup, you're full of death.
Mm.
Instead, you ought to pay attention to the weighty matters and let the inside be reflective of what's on the outside. So that's what this is about. It's what's
Mhm.
on the inside ought to be reflected on what's on the outside. So it's this idea of wine sort of overfilling in these cups such that we are full to capacity inside, we are full to capacity outside, and the whole thing becomes a unified whole.
I think the metaphor of this piece ties in well with the question I wanted to ask in a little bit here, but I'd like to get to it now.
Mm,
So during this time, the inside, the outside, with COVID
yeah.
and with the pandemic, how has it changed your practice? What things have you noticed of the outlook of being an artist right now?
Mm. Well, I think some friends of mine have called this the great interrupter.
Hmm.
And when you're interrupted, you have options. One of those options is you have my attention. And I think it might be as simple as that. Just naming the fact that my pace as a person, as a dad, as a husband, as a ministry director, as an artist, is maybe not the ideal pace for the outcomes that could be best in my story and in the stories of others. So just having the space to pause and become available. And that might sound really super ethereal, but in the studio, it just meant saying yes to a couple of commissions that I might not otherwise have gotten to say yes to. And as a result, I get to go down some roads that I didn't anticipate going down. This portrait back here of a gentleman is uh, is because of a friend of mine. Started on a new dream, and it was as a result of this guy's story and his inspiration for her. And I wouldn't have had a chance to dig into any of that space had I not just been available to it. Um, the piece directly behind me, is green and maroon. I think it's the last piece actually on the slides, but I'm gonna grab it here. Uh, it's a lot. This is real similar, of course, to Above the Grid, but this one is
Oh,
called
sure.
Courses. It's actually this sort of outline is kind of the coursework of the half marathon for the Earth Day race. That would have happened on Earth Day, but didn't get a chance to. So being able to accept that commission, being accepting of other new opportunities for work, gave me access to stories and ways of thinking that I just probably wouldn't have had time for.
Mm.
So, I mean,
Hmm.
it's been as simple as that. It's just is making space and being available to other projects and just letting a few things settle. Um, it's reclaimed a certain value for the studio that I know you have to fight for.
Hmm.
And I got a lot of help this spring in getting there.
Good. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that this time has been brought some new ideas and new paths for you too. So speaking of that, do you have a dream project?
Hmm. I One thing that was really cool that got to happen this past February, I should say late January, was I got to do a retrospective show with 40 pieces of work over 40 years of art making. So I started with pieces from age 6 all the way up to the present, and up to this point, being able to collect a significant majority of my work and have it, shipped here and from other places and assembled in one location at the Paramount. That was truly a sweet dream. Um, so on the heels of that, I think what um, what's exciting for me is to consider, uh, again, I love how the stories get to overlap in my line of work, and that creates for a sweet creative process. But I'd like for the kind of the lion's share of my time to wind up in the studio. I think I learned also during COVID that I think I could be one of those guys who's in the studio 4 days a week, For a while, I thought that couldn't be me, but I think it could be. So I'd like to give that a test.
Hmm.
Um, I'd like to be doing commissions potentially and original work and having shows such that I'm in the studio 3 and 4 days a week. I think I could do that, and so that feels like kind of that next space I'd love to set sights for in the next decade or so.
Nice. Well, good luck. I
Yeah,
hope that happens for you. I really do. That sounds wonderful.
that would be
And
awesome.
so as we close up our time together, is there anything else you would like to share with viewers today with our for our artist spotlight or something you'd like to
Mm,
end with?
I'm sure I'll think of exactly what that should be in about 15 minutes from now.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah, when we're all said and done. Oh, what would I say? Goodness, the idea that I mean, we were living in the kinds of times which make it so incredibly difficult for folks to get beneath the surface with one another for the sake of the community. Um, Real stories from real people still matter.
Hmm.
No, no matter how savvy you are, what kind of personal branding you achieve, um, the power of authentic story as it connects to the stories of others, and then, if you'll have it, the willingness to consider the larger narrative that might connect our stories. I'll tell you, giving yourself to those places of connection, you can build a life on it.
Hmm.
And as an artist, that's exciting territory to explore. But that isn't limited to visual artists. I think that's a work that we've got to collectively get better at, is the connecting of stories and giving space for that connection. So it's what
Hmm.
I aim to do in the studio and as a worker here at Youth for Christ, as a husband, as a dad, as a neighbor. We could use more of that. I'm absolutely convinced of it.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, Matt. I agree with you. Connections are so important, and I'm hoping, even through this virtual weekend of artists and sharing other artists, that people make connections and are
Mm,
inspired and
mm,
and support our local artists too and make connections. So, and they can get your work again. I want to mention it again. They can go to your website, send an
yeah.
email to you, and purchase your work. It's been so wonderful getting to know you, Matt. I'm so glad this has been quite wonderful to have this opportunity with you. So thank you so much for your time today.
I am so thankful, Alicia, for what you've done with this in partnership with the Art Crawl. Um, for those of us who value our stories and our work being able to be shared, this a huge gift. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Cool. You too.
Bye bye.
Peace.